Welcome to the podcast, John. How you doing today, man?
I'm good. I'm really good, Scott. Thank you. Real
Yeah,
good.
I'm. I was just actually talking to my the co-founder of the Brotherhood of Fatherhood, Josh Price, today, and I was telling him about this being scheduled today, and I said I'm really excited about this because I love what we're going to talk about. So, first of all, why don't you go ahead and just kind of tell our listeners like who you are?
Sure. Well, I'm John Francis. I'm in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. I guess, I don't know. My background is I'm just a regular guy, I guess, kind of
That's awesome. That's what
my
we think.
thing. Yeah. That's, I'm a lucky guy. I guess I was born and raised here in Minnesota. I'm the youngest of five kids in my family, so I'm the lucky kid. I was little Johnny growing up, and so it was a lot of fun growing up as the youngest of five. I had an older brother, and I still have three older sisters. And my parents were great folks. My dad was a fantastic entrepreneur in the hair salon industry and the
Oh, cool.
franchise industry. And so I grew up in a family business
Yeah.
and multiple family businesses, I guess. We got into all kinds of stuff over the years. And I got married, let's see, 1999, so 21 years ago.
Yep.
I've got two lovely daughters. They are 17 and 13, two teenagers. So
Oh
we're in the
boy.
middle of it. It's
Yeah, you are.
it's wonderful and challenging, and they're normal, healthy, but it's has its ups and downs, just like anything. I work from home. I'm a lucky guy. Yeah, I've had my own business pretty much my whole life, I guess. I've worked for my family or myself for the most part my whole career.
That's
And
a
yeah,
that's a
um,
blessing.
yeah, it really is.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad sold his hair salon. I can't even tell you, maybe it was 45 to 50 years he ran that, owned and ran in the hair
Wow.
business. And so I grew up in that. I grew up cleaning the salon,
Yeah, sweeping hair.
vacuuming all the hair.
Yeah.
The hair everywhere.
Yeah. No, well, I too. I had a lot of fond memories as a kid. We used to load the shelves with the retail products,
Yep. Yeah.
and sweeping hair and wiping hair and cleaning little hair trimmings everywhere. I mean, that's just
Yes.
the environment you're in. But
Yeah.
we had a lot of fun with it, and we had a nice business. We franchised it,
Wow.
and it was quite a story. But yeah, it worked. It worked out pretty well.
I love those stories. I learned how to work from that. I learned how to work from watching my dad. I learned how to work from being in his salon. He had multiple. He moved around and kept getting bigger and bigger. And I
Mhm.
was the cleaning guy. I was, restocking those machines. They had these vending machines that did. I don't know. It was a long time ago, but just so
Mhm.
many memories and what I learned from my parents having their own business. I don't know of a better way to kind of get that entrepreneurial bug than to grow up in it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, there are schools that actually have entrepreneur courses,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and it's like fine. I've actually been a speaker and I go tell some stories and inspire these college kids. But yeah, I think you're kind of born into it, or you're born with it. And there's
Yeah.
some people that are, like I call myself unemployable, right? I couldn't
Yeah.
work for anybody else. I mean, I would if I had to, but it'd be hard for me to work for someone else after so much time on my own. I'm very comfortable with the ownership, but it is a big responsibility. You make it or you break it on yourself.
Yeah.
So
It
um,
rises and falls on your back
yeah, it's
alone.
not easy. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Nothing's easy.
So have you kind of always been an entrepreneur then? Always kind of your
Yeah.
own make it?
Yeah, I mean, I worked for our family business for a long time till I was in my 30s, and it was a nice business, pretty good size, and we had a lot of work to do there. And but after we sold that business, I went off and I did my own thing since then. So I've been an independent, uh, you know, for the last 20 years.
Wow.
Uh, And prior to that, I worked, for my family, and we had all kinds of different businesses, but we owned, it was a family business, or,
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
way or the other. So
That's
yeah, it's,
fun.
I mean, I've had jobs, I've worked other places, but never for very long, you know.
Right. Right. Yeah. I work for, I kind of do contracting for a company now, and um, my people tell me I have to stop treating it like it's my own business, but that's the only way I know how to operate. Right? It's like, well, it's no fun if I don't treat it like it's my own business.
Yeah, you do what works, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So it's. I don't think everyone understands it, but it's maybe it's a kind of disease.
Well, it's a blessing and a curse, just
Yeah.
like a lot of things, a
Mhm.
double-edged sword or whatever you want to call it. I love working for myself, and I have clients, and I work hard at what I do, but if I'm not doing it, nobody's doing
That's
it.
right.
I don't have any employees. I mean, I've had the businesses where I've had employees, and
Mhm.
I've done all that, and I really rather not anymore. And I kind of don't have to, so
That's
I don't,
awesome. Great.
yeah, lucky.
So 17 and 13-year-old
Yeah,
daughters.
two
So
lovely girls.
eighth grade, middle school and high school then.
Yeah, right. My older girl is a senior this year. She's
Oh
going to
boy.
graduate in the spring. We're very excited about that. She's doing great. Hard worker. She just finished her tennis season here. They had an abbreviated season with the
Mhm.
COVID thing, but she earned a letter in tennis. She lettered in the sport,
Oh,
which is
fun.
great. I never did that, so I was too busy working when I was in school. But she's a good student. She's a good girl. She's funny, and yeah, high school has been a lot of fun for her. I think she's enjoying it. She's doing all the right things, regular kid. We're looking at schools and college, and she's trying to figure out what to do next. And
Yeah, the next steps. It's kind of a big deal. And
yeah,
then your 13-year-old, is she an eighth grader then?
she is. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's going to finish middle school, and she's doing great too. She's a hard worker at school. She's playing volleyball right now. That's kind of her
Awesome.
thing. And
Yeah.
Um, the good news is my girls get along together. They
Oh,
really
wow.
are good with each other. I don't think they've had any fights, maybe two or three in their whole time and together. So in our house, their bedrooms are on the same level, different than we have like this main one level. So our room, the master bedroom, is on the main level with the kitchen and the living room and all that. And
Yeah.
then the girls are both downstairs. There's a lower level where they have
Oh, interesting.
their bedrooms and their bathroom and all that. And they've always been really close. And they are about the same size physically. So, they swap shoes and
Oh boy.
clothes and
Yeah.
jackets and, whatever. And they seem to, I don't see them fighting a lot. When I was growing up, I had three sisters, and I saw some, pretty awful behavior sometimes. Those girls can be pretty nasty, and it wasn't always like that, but they were, it was just a lot more drama in that sense for me growing up than I'm seeing with my own kids, which I think is I don't know if it's a purpose or accident, but they get along well. They're friends. They take care of each other. They do things together. I mean, they do plenty of things separately, but yeah. So I got two girls at home, and they both go to the same school, which is convenient.
Yeah, no joke.
And but it's a tough school. It's a private school, so they got a lot of homework, and
Yep.
they really academically very challenging. But I tell them it's a great thing because you'll be better prepared for what's next. And
Yeah.
so they're moving on and moving through, and they're good kids. They really are. And I don't know. I can start dispensing with the one-liners, but the line that's coming to my mind right now is people say, your kids are really who they are when you're not around.
Mm,
So when I'm with them, or me and my wife are with them, we look at each other sometimes like, what, why do they have to be so, whatever. It's
right.
not always easy, but when my kids are when we're not around and the kids are like with my family or their friends or whatever, they're great kids. So
Great reports. Yeah.
I think it has something to do, they're still young enough that they can't seem to behave the way we'd like them to when we're around.
Yeah.
So I think they behave better when we're not around. I don't
Yeah.
know if that makes sense, but
It does. It does. So I taught for years, and I would have those parent teacher conferences. I'm like, oh man, your child is, the pillar of our, and they're like, wait, what?
yeah, you're talking about my kid. Yeah, right. It's
Like
the same.
last same name. You know who we're talking about here? They're like, I'm so glad they're that way for you. And I think that's pretty standard. That's, and my boys get along really well too. They share the same floor in the house away from my wife and I, and it's really fun to watch them grow up like that. And I think we're both really blessed they don't fight. How's
Yeah.
it been raising daughters? I'm a dad, or a boy dad, so
Yeah. Well, it's I mean, you get what you get. I'm thrilled. I love him. And being a dad, it's the most important thing I'll ever do. I know that. It didn't take me long to figure that out. But there's things I miss, I guess, or things I speculate that would be different if I had a boy.
Mhm.
I mean, I like to go hunting and fishing and snowmobiling and stuff, and they do too. I mean, I take my girls; they've been on snowmobiles and
fun.
they go hunting and fishing, but it's not much. I mean, that's just not the same. And so yeah, you miss some of the sports and things that boys would probably do that are different than girls. I mean, I hate to be too stereotypical, but my kids are pretty, right down the middle, regular kids, and but they're girls, and we're dealing with girl kind of issues,
Yeah.
and it's just different. I've got plenty of friends that have daughters and sons, and you see the difference,
Yeah.
and we talk about the difference. It's like, well, does your kid do this? Well, not really, and you figure it's because they're not a girl, or they're not a boy, or
Yeah.
whatever. So there's differences, but I don't. I don't have any regrets. I'm thrilled to have two girls, and if we could have, we might have had more. We had, we weren't able. We kind of were lucky to get what we have, and but that's life. I
Yeah.
guess you make the most of whatever comes.
Absolutely. A lot of
Yeah.
men that I've talked to, that are no longer, their kids are adults. They're like, oh man, raising kids was nothing. It's the grandkids. I mean, they're like, if I would have known how great this was going to be, that's
Yeah.
why God, made it so horrible, because when as parents sometimes, because when we got to being grandparents, this is the best thing ever. So I kind of think like, okay, yeah, you have two girls, you might get a grandson and you get to
Yeah.
live all of that. Right. So
Oh yeah. Yeah.
yeah, many,
Well,
many
it's a
sometimes.
long way out for me. I think I've heard it put
It's
that.
a ways down. Yeah,
Yeah, I've heard it put grandchildren are the gift from God that you get for not killing your own kids.
exactly. Yeah, it's
It's
the
a
carrot.
reward.
It's the
Yeah.
carrot out there. Don't do it. Well, so let's. You said you had what, four siblings? So there's five
Yeah.
growing
There
up.
were
So that's a
five kids in
whole
my
household.
family. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was crazy. A bit of chaos,
How
but
was
good.
how was your relationship with your father?
Well, I was the lucky kid. I'll be honest. When I before I was born, and my dad was a new dad, and young family, and they were young. I mean, my parents were married in the 50s, and my older brother was born in the late 50s. And when they were little, and he was busy, he worked a lot. I mean, and he worked and worked and worked. He was driven. And my dad grew up in poverty. I mean,
Right.
on the farm, right, with little or nothing. His dad died when he was 12,
Oh wow.
and he was the oldest of four kids. My dad was, and he met my mom, and a little long story there. But so when our family was new, I guess, when they got married and they started having kids right away, and my brother and sisters, and they were growing up, my dad really was busy and gone a lot. He was working so much, traveling a lot, and it was not pretty. And in later years, as a whole family, we went through some family counseling and did some work on this stuff, and a lot of it came out, and so what I think happened is by the time I was around, my dad had kind of, I would say, woke up, right? He had realized that, hey, I need to do this differently. Why am I working so hard? What an expense, what a cost. to
Exactly.
the family. And I mean, it was, it was pretty sad but I didn't experience that, right? This all happened before I was around, but he was a good man and he was trying to do the right thing, but he was just really driven to never see poverty for him or his family, our family, my family. But by the time I was growing up, things were already kind of going pretty well. The business was good, and he was able to kind of back off the workload a little bit and not travel so much. And I frankly think he recognized that I could do this differently with these younger kids. So me and my next oldest sister, I think he was around a lot more for us. He wasn't on the road traveling and working, all hours every day, every weekend. And so I think the attitude that he took to the family changed for the better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I said, I didn't really know what I didn't experience. So my relationship with my dad was actually pretty good. He was interesting and fun, and was a hard worker. He was a great role model for me. And I went to work. I wanted to work with my dad because that was the opportunity. He had so many things going on. It's like, we could use help over here. You could do this over there. If you wanted to make money in the family, if you wanted to buy something, they wouldn't just give us the money. He'd give us a job
Yeah.
and say, well, here, how much do you want to make? Well, I'm going to buy this, whatever, and all of us, all my siblings, we always had opportunity. I guess he taught me the real meaning of opportunity and how to appreciate it and how to find it. And so I grew up working a lot myself, and because that's where he was, and that's what I wanted to do anyway. So it was a good in that sense. I went to the better schools. We lived in a big house. We took the fantastic vacations, and I thought everybody lived like that. That's how it is, right? You
Right.
think what you have is what everybody has, and then of course you grow up and you realize that it's not all the same for everybody else. And so by the time I was in high school, he had developed a cancer. He had cancer. Actually, it started when I was in well, it started when I was in grade school, and it got worse through middle school, and then while I was in high school, it got really bad. And he fought cancer. He had kidney cancer for
Oh
15
boy.
years,
Oh,
and he had some 22 surgeries. Right, he was in and out of the hospital like a revolving door, and so that created a lot of stress and tension for the whole family
yeah.
because he would go through these surgeries and it's like life and death, and he'd come out of it and he'd be okay for a while, and we'd think, oh great, he's clear, they got it, and then sure enough it would pop up again a year later and they'd say, well, we found more tumors and we got to just wait for it to grow big enough so we can operate, which just was very frustrating. And
For sure.
so we're on this roller coaster, I would call it, up and down with all of this, and in the meantime, we're just doing everything else. But that caused a lot of stress and anxiety for our whole family, and it created a lot of challenges. But as I grew up, went through high school and did okay there, and then got to college and went for a business degree because I needed to stick around. We had a lot of business going on, and frankly, he needed the help. He's like,
Yeah.
it'd be okay if you stuck around and helped with some of this stuff, right? We had a lot of real estate and commercial properties and things. And so I did some of that while I was in college, and that worked out great. I mean, it was a good job, and it was real work. And so I got some real serious responsibility early, probably earlier than most people would, but that's the situation we had. So I took, I did the best I could with it, and took advantage of that. And then I got out of college and went to work again. I guess for the bigger family company was by then quite large, a franchise organization and hair salons, and it was a big company. We were publicly traded, and
Oh
and
wow.
I got to do some international work. I got to do some pretty high level executive level stuff and strategic planning and acquisitions, and we were doing some really cool stuff. And then my dad's cancer kept going and going. And we got to the point where we realized he was not going to beat this thing. It was going to take him. And I'll never forget, there was a certain point where, we kind of had the family sit down and it's like, okay, look, we got to be realistic that he's not going to beat this. It's just going to be a matter of time. And he wouldn't accept it.
Right.
the family did and the doctors did and kind of my mother and my sibling, we all did, but he never really did. He's like, no, I'm going to beat this, and it was like, come on, Dad, but so it got a little weird, I guess, for a while because, it was like we were all trying to prepare for this and he really wasn't up until the very end. I think when at the last few months of his life, I know that he knew it was coming, and he did a great job, I would say, with the whole experience. Fighting it like he did and dealing with it the way he did, and trying to do the right thing at every turn. He really was a heck of a guy, a great role model, like I said, and he tried to take care of a lot of people, and he really had a tremendous impact on a lot of people. He created a lot of success for himself and for everyone that was either an employee or a franchisee or other people around him and around us and around our business. So he had quite a ripple effect of success. So when he finally died, for us, in a sense, we were almost relieved, like, well, okay, we knew this was coming and we were more or less prepared for it. But of course, it changed everything. It was a complete, it's like I remember thinking that the sun is not coming up tomorrow. How can we go on? And so that was pretty tough. But, you get through it, and counselors and therapy and,
Yeah.
Good family and good faith. And, you do what people do. So our family frankly, I think my father's illness brought our family closer together because we had to kind of support each other and support my mother. And so when he died, I mean, there wasn't like this dramatic, catastrophic, everything was prepared. We were well prepared. So that happens. And then a few years later, just 2.5 years later, my older brother, who was 10 years older than me, died in a car accident.
Oh.
Which of course is unexpected. I mean, you don't plan for that. And he was in a terrible condition. He was in the middle of his second divorce, which was really nasty. And he had 5 kids from the 2 relationships. Anyway, when he died, that was really the thing that upset the apple cart, I would say. Because obviously we weren't anticipating that, and we were totally unprepared. And because he was in the midst of this really horrible personal situation, we were all going through it kind of with him at the time. And then all of a sudden, boom, he's gone. And it's like, well, now what? Right. So that had I would say, a bigger impact on the family, because then my mother, she was not prepared for that. We were just kind of coming out of it from my dad's passing, and then my brother dies. And so she kind of disappeared and went through some depression and, normal grieving and, a lot of difficult things. And she came back after about a year and said, you know what, I want to retire. I'm done working. I don't want to work anymore. And there was no talking her out of it. I mean, we're like, yeah, okay, we get it, So one thing led to another, and we wound up selling the whole company, the whole business, which really was I would say the third trauma in my life, right? Losing my dad was a big deal, and losing my brother was a bigger deal. But then selling the family business was another big deal, because that changed my career path completely. And but it was a good deal. I mean, on the the economics were tremendous, and it made all the right. It was for the right reasons. It made a lot of sense. Everybody was. It was a very successful transaction, I would say, but it changed my situation completely, because now I lost my dad, now I lost my brother, and now I lost my job, and my motivation for really working as hard as I was working had disappeared.
Yeah.
So that was a tough period for me. And I was 26 when my dad passed, and I was 29 when my brother passed. And then we sold the company a year later, maybe, I think it was a year later, maybe 2, I don't know. It wasn't much later. And So all of a sudden I'm like, well, now what do I do?
Yeah. And
So
at age 30 or 31, right? Yeah.
yeah, and everything had kind of changed. Like my whole world had changed in just a few years.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of typically when men are kind of just settling into their career. They're just started settling in, right? They've kind of found their way, and you're thrown into a completely
Yeah, you know,
new
I hadn't
semester.
thought of it that way, but it was like the end of my career
Yeah.
at that time. I already had a career by the time I was 30 in the family and the franchising and real estate. And anyway, it had occurred to me. I had a conversation with my mom after all of this was going down, and she was like, I had realized why I didn't want to get married at that time, because my dad and my brother were not going to be there,
Oh man.
and which is totally irrational,
Right.
But I had come to the conclusion that, like, I had a fantastic girlfriend, and finally I did, after I recognized how stupid that was, and then I immediately went and asked her to marry me, and then we were engaged. We had been dating for years, and she's like, "Well, what's holding you back?" And I said, "Well, they're not going to be there. I don't want to get married if they're not going to be part of it." And that was an eye opener,
Yeah.
right? And so I got kind of through that, and got dealt with that, and said, okay, well, obviously there are a lot of things they're not going to be there for, and you can't let that hold you back. So so I asked my girlfriend, let's get married, and she said yes. Thank God. That was the best decision I ever made. She's a great woman and a great mom and a good wife, and I mean, really, if you knew me and you know her, you'd be like, how did you do that? She's
I feel the same way.
Anyway, we got engaged for a year, and then we finally got married, planned a fabulous wedding. And honestly, the wedding it turned out to be kind of a celebration for the family. Like, my mother's like, look, we've been through a lot as a family, a lot of loss, a lot of tragedy, and we need a good party. And I mean, we like to party, I guess. We have my family's a lot of fun. If you knew my whole family, and so she's like, we want you guys to go for it with this wedding. And so we had a fantastic wedding,
Fun.
and it was great because we were crazy in love, and we were old enough. We weren't like young. I think I was 32, and my wife was, well, she would have been, I think, 29. So that's not early. I mean, we were pretty late to get married, and it was a beautiful wedding. We had a tremendous amount of fun, and then I got back to work. It's like, okay, well, I took some time off because I had the time. I had an opportunity to. What I'll never have again was a severance agreement where I got paid to not work,
Yeah.
which was unbelievable, right? But that was part of the transaction. So I took that time off, and then I got back to business, and I decided to go do my own thing with what I really know, which is franchising. So I got back to work in right after 2000. In 2001, I started building stores. So I had a different brand, a different concept, a completely different industry, but franchise, retail service franchising, and got back to work, and then got focused on, what can I build for me and for my family. Now it's not so much about my mom and sisters; they're going to be fine, but what can you do for yourself and your new wife? And then we started having our family. So, like I said earlier, we had a tough go having kids. We found out how, if I would have known, it was. We had some issues with the fertility, and we went through all the programs and the doctors, and we wound up going through in vitro, which was a challenge.
Oh boy.
Um,
Yeah.
and I could go on and on about that, but the outcome was we had two beautiful, healthy girls, one at a time. God bless. We lucked out. We didn't have to make any difficult decisions. We didn't have to deal with too much drama. I mean, it was not easy. We did 5 cycles
Oh man.
in vitro, if you know that. And anyway, I had my first daughter when I was 36, and I had my second daughter when I was 40. So I'm an older dad, right? My kids, friends, parents are all about 10 years younger than me.
Yeah. Yeah.
which is fine.
Yeah.
It really doesn't bother me. I mean, I don't think about age as a real issue. It's you're as old as you think, right?
Exactly.
As old as you feel. So it's been a lot of fun. And then once we had the kids, then everything kind of shifted again. It's like, oh, okay, great. Now I've got my motivation, it's
Mhm.
very clear. Take care of these kids, take care of this family, do your best for the people around you. And so it was pretty easy for me then to have that motivation. And that's been a good driver for the last 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't see it stopping, frankly. It might
Great.
shift a little bit, as my girls grow up and move on. But like you say, there's a lot of other folks, a lot of more potential ahead of me, I think, still than behind me.
Oh, heck yeah.
You bet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the losing your dad and then losing your brother, so that was basically the men in your life, because the
Hmm.
rest is your mom and your sisters. So
Oh man, yeah, I'm surrounded now. I got three sisters, a mom, a wife, and two daughters. You
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Now the good news is I married a lovely girl who's she has her dad. Her mom passed away, but her parents are fantastic. Her dad is great. My father-in-law, he's a champ, great guy. And then she has two brothers, and they're great guys.
Oh,
They're
awesome.
just great. And then my one sister is married, and she married a great guy. So I've got some in-laws that are fantastic.
Yeah.
And frankly, I've got a lot of good friends. I'm a lucky guy. I made friends, all along the way in high school and college and from work and from business and different industries. And because of my work got me to travel all over the world. I've got friends all over the place. And so my personal network is pretty strong, and I've got a lot of good guys that I rely on. My friends and buddies. We go hunting and fishing and snowmobiling, and we're pretty serious about doing that stuff. And
It's important to have.
yeah,
Yeah.
it really. And my wife, thank God, understands that. She
Mm.
says, I get it. You need to go be with those boys because you're not with your dad or your brother.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually good friends with some of my brother's friends became my friends, because we would go run around together and do those, hunting and fishing and snowmobiling and
Right.
as a big group. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
I've got those relationships, and that's frankly how I think this whole Father's Eve thing kind of started.
Yeah. Let's jump into that.
Um,
Father's Eve.
well, I'll be honest, it started as an accident, right? Like a lot of good
A
things.
lot of good things start
It
that
was
way.
sort
Yeah.
of unintentional. My wife and I, when that recession came through in 2009, 8, 9, and 10, right? Everything was cooling off. Everything stopped. The franchising world kind of froze
Oh,
because,
yeah.
nobody had any money, couldn't build or buy anything. Nobody could finance anything. And, everybody was in a tailspin. So uh, the franchising cooled off. And I had already had a bunch of stores open. So I was open and operating, but I couldn't sell and build anymore. And that kind of takes the fun out of it. And then the real estate business actually became an opportunity because the recession drove down a lot of values on
Oh,
a lot
yeah.
of commercial property. Everything went on sale, and so we did some, I would say, estate planning with our family, and we bought some commercial property because that was the other business I grew up with is commercial real estate. So we transitioned some things around, and I sold off my franchise business because there wasn't much momentum there anymore. And we got into the real estate business a little further, which was great. It turned out to be a pretty good deal. So anyway, we moved to a new house. I said, now's a good time for us to move. And we had a nice house, but it was small and it was tight. And I wanted a little more space, not a lot more space, but what I really wanted was a bigger garage.
Yeah.
So
We all.
we moved in St. Paul. We've got a beautiful old house, this big old brick colonial. And but the garage was terrible. I said, well, I can only buy that house if I can tear down the garage and build a new garage. So we did. So I had the contractors come out and they tore it down and they built what I would call a real garage. And it took a little while. It was a big project, but when that garage was finished finally in we bought the house in, I think, 2011, and then we moved and rebuilt the garage, was done in 2012. So the house was already been remodeled and the garage was brand new. And I wanted to show off this garage to my buddies because it's like, I come see
Yeah.
my man cave, right? And
Good.
I
Yes.
could finally put all my stuff in one place, the cars and the machines and the toys and everything else. And so my wife and I are actually flipping the calendar back when you used to flip calendars,
Right.
right?
When
It
you were
was,
paper. Yes.
yeah, right. It was like a week at a glance. And so, okay, we're flipping the calendars. I'm looking for a Friday or Saturday night in the summer. And, with the busy summer with the kids and everything else going on, the only night that was available was this Saturday in June. And I look at the calendar. I'm like, how about this day? And she says, yeah, okay, that looks good. She's checking her calendar. So I said, well, that's the day. And then I turned the page and the next day is Father's Day. And I said, oh man, I don't think nobody wants to go out Father's the night before. And we were looking for more different dates, later, and everything was booked. And I said, well, if it's got to be that day and it's the night before Father's Day, we're going to call it Father's Eve. And so it was kind of a joke, right? So I invited about 25 buddies over, a bunch of guys, got some beer, cleaned out the garage, and said, come on over. We're going to have a party in the garage. It was basically a garage christening party,
Yeah. Yeah.
throw a bottle against the wall and, kind of break it in. And it just happened to be that night. And so we called it Father's Eve, like a joke, right? Like, come on, it's Father's Eve. Okay. And it just happened to be a bunch of guys. And as it got closer, as the date was getting closer, more and more guys were showing up. They're like, well, I'm coming out, man. We're going to be there. I'm like, oh, okay, great. So I talked to my lovely wife and I said, honey, if you and the girls are here, I don't think I'm going to be able to relax and enjoy having my friends over. And she said, well, what are you saying? What do you want? I said, would you mind taking the girls and go to your dad's house for the night? And we'll do Father's Day on Sunday, but Saturday afternoon and Saturday night, I'd kind of like to be home alone with all of my friends, so we can go nuts. And that's just what we did. So I had these, let's say 30 guys show up into my garage. We had, 3 kegs of beer and 2 bags of chips, and that was it. I mean, there was nothing to it. The music was just a little too loud, it was perfect. And, no women, no children, no nothing. And we didn't do a thing. We just hung out, relaxed, take it easy. Everyone got to catch up with each other and look at the new garage and check everything out. And, they looked at the house, but we really weren't in the house, I'm like, stay
Right.
out of the house, and so we had a great time. It was a lot of fun. And then they're like, well, geez, we got to do this again. We got to do it again. So the first ever was 2012, and it was truly an accident. But then we did it the next year, and of course, it had to be on Father's Eve because now we're calling it Father's Eve.
Coined it. Yeah.
So 2013, it did basically the same thing, but there was about maybe 50 guys that showed up, more guys, because they had heard about it. They're like, man, you really had and I think Facebook was just getting started,
Yep.
or we were just starting to use Father's Eve, or starting to use Facebook, was promoting and people were inviting, other friends and like, yeah, why not? Let's go. And then it was, that was 2013. It got pretty big. Then 2014, it was pretty much, I don't want to say out of control, but it was really like there were guys I didn't know that were
Yeah.
there. And I'm thinking, well, this is great. If these are guys, that are coming to this party because their friends are inviting other friends, right? And the whole thing for me was guys would show up who didn't know each other, but by the end of the night, they sure did.
Yeah.
And now we added food. One of my good friends is in the restaurant business, so he brought out this big grill and he would cook up, the shrimp and chicken and burgers. I mean, we had all kinds of food. We added games. We had this putting game thing. We rented some equipment and tables and chairs. I mean, that was turning into a bigger deal. And then someone challenged me that year, 2014 was kind of when it was, we had like a car show out the street, and
Gosh.
it was just nuts. And and the guy, someone, I don't remember who it was, but somebody challenged me and they're like, what are you going to do with this Father's Eve thing? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? What's wrong with this? You know, and they're like, well, you could do some good. Like a guy
Yeah.
pointing at your chest, like you could do some good with this. I'm like, yeah, well, once challenged, right? So he knew my background in franchising, and he's like, you can do something with this. Why don't you do something good? So okay, so we thought about it that fall, and hunting season and snowmobiling. I was talking to my buddies, like, well, if I'm going to do something good, I'm going to need some help because it's outgrown the garage, and I'm not interested in doing this all alone. So we organized. I got a few of my buddies from school and just friends to help me, and we organized ourselves and we moved it to a bar that was nearby. A friend owned the bar. We got this sort of back room, and we made it a charity fundraiser for a charity. We picked two charities, and we raised $10,000
Dang.
for charity. And this was like, I mean, we're a bunch of guys. We didn't know anything. I mean, I'm not a event guy. I'm not a charity guy. I'm not I'm just a regular guy. I got a lot of friends. And so I called in all my markers. It's like, I would tell my buddies, either give me something to put in the auction or come here and buy something, and spend a little money because we're raising money for charity. And we got a little bit of media, right? One of my buddies from college is in the PR business. So he got us in the newspaper and the TV. The TV trucks were out in the parking lot. It must have been a slow news night because I think there was nothing else going on. But we're like, wow, we got something here. So after that, I decided, how do I really expand this and really do some good? Well, my world is franchising. Like I said, that's the format of that I'm familiar with. So my lawyer, I'm talking to him, he says, well, you can't franchise one night a year. I mean, there's no business model there. It's not a
Right.
sustainable, scalable thing. I said, well, but what do I do? I got this thing. He said, well, I got advice from quite a few people, and like I said, I'm not afraid to ask for help. As long as other people will help me do it, I'll do it. So we trademarked it and we license it for free. We give away the license. So we own the trademark, Father's Eve. And I went that year, 2016, I went to an event called Dad 2.0,
Okay.
which is like a fatherhood conference, I guess. And it was for influencers. And I had no idea what that meant. And in media, and I'm like, well, what is that? And I could spell the word blog, but I didn't know anything about blogging or social media or influencers or any of that. So, someone told me about it. I looked it up. I signed up, and I just went to that conference. I printed up some business cards, and I'm not afraid of making new friends.
Right.
And didn't take me long to meet a few guys and say, well, geez, I got this deal, Father's Eve, and well, what's that? And I could tell my story, and so I met some groups there and some people there that are still good friends of mine that have really helped us expand this thing. One is the guys from the City Dads group
Mm-hmm.
out of New York, and they had basically chapters of their dad groups. I'm like, are you kidding? Where are you in Minnesota? Where have you been?
Right. Where are
I
you
needed
everywhere
you when
else?
I was pushing the stroller to the park, and
Right.
all the moms are looking funny at you. Like, whose kids are those? And I was that stay-at-home dad or work-from-home dad, for ever since my kids were born, right? So I'm like, City Dads, you got groups all over. I said, that looks like a franchise, right? I said, look, fellas, I can help you with what you're doing. They're not a franchise, but it looks like one to me. Everything does. I said, how about if you have the City Dads guys host a Father's Eve in their local market, right? This becomes their national one night a year big deal, right? And they could all do it. Then I also met the guys from the National At Home Dad Network.
Mm.
I'm like, you got to be kidding me. What is this? You guys are all, they're like, well, yeah, we've been around for 20 years. I'm like, oh my God, I had no idea. So, and they were a charity. They still are. They're a nonprofit. I'm like, well, I need a better nonprofit. And so we decided to raise money for them. I said to the At Home Dad group, I said, well, if we raise money and give it to you, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
Where does it go? What's your budget? And they said, well, we have a conference the home dad con, which is a bunch of dads getting together, and they have speakers and programs and workshops. And I said, well, okay, when I go to conferences, there's usually a reception the night before everything starts. I said, you
Yeah.
do anything like that? They said, well, yeah, guys get together. They come in the day early or whatever. And I said, well, I want to sponsor the reception the night before, and I want you to call it Convention Eve, sponsored by Father's Eve. And that's where I want our fundraiser to your organization to sponsor that. That'll get more guys in earlier, and they can connect and get to know you. It's all the hi, how you been, what's going on, before the program really starts the next day.
Right.
So they thought that was a great idea, and we've been doing that for, geez, I think we did that for 3 or 4 years. We did it. Now this year, of course, they didn't have anything. The COVID has changed everything. But so 2016, we licensed it and promoted it a little bit. We did 12 cities, 2016, and it was like, wow, this really has some potential. 2017, we pushed it a little harder, started a little earlier, a little more media, and spent a few dollars, and again, fundraiser for charity. And that year, I think we were at 35 locations,
Wow.
2017. And we had one in the UK. Somebody picked it up in Scotland. And we had a guy in Costa Rica who found us. And he was an American living in Costa Rica. I'm like, sure, why not? 2018, we moved it, stepped it up. We were in 43 cities in 2018. 2019, last year, we were in 60 cities.
Wow.
And in Canada and Mexico, and we had sponsors. I work with Sport Clips Haircuts, which
Yep.
is hair salon franchise. I serve on their board of directors, and so they were a sponsor. We had Smarty Pants vitamins. We had a few other product and brands that wanted to reach the dads, and we really had some great momentum 2019. And we're still working with the City Dads group and the At Home Dad Network, and these guys are. I mean, there's guys all over the place that they're just looking for something like this.
Yeah.
So then this year, 2020, with the COVID, really kind of blew everything up, because I had some great momentum with. I had some restaurant brands that we were going to get to sponsor and host events at their restaurants, and we were really trying to take it up another level, but we couldn't do anything in person. And I'm talking to my lawyer. He's like, look, you better not promote events, because the state and the rules are, you're not supposed to gather more than 10 people or whatever. I'm like, well, come on. And he's like, no, man, if you put it out there, somebody gets the virus, and they were at Father's Eve, you got exposure. I'm like, damn. So we kind of had to pull back, and we put it online. We went to a virtual format, just like everything else in the world this year. Everything went online. So we did Father's Eve from my garage. And when I was a kid growing up, I remember Dick Clark used to do from Times Square the countdown New Year's Eve, right, and at midnight. So our Father's Eve countdown, we do it at 8 o'clock, because I'm going to be asleep by 10:30. So we did the countdown toast from my garage. We called it Times Square in my garage. I had about 6 guys over. We drank a ton of beer and had some fun, and we streamed it online. We had a production company help us. We shot a bunch of videos, and we got our partners involved. They provided some videos. We had a great entertainer, this guy named John Sweeney. He's a comedian. He did a session for us and recorded that. And our reach was over 7,000 people.
That's awesome.
This year online. So, and I had no idea how we were going to pull that off, because I'm not an online production guy. I mean, we're learning all kinds of new stuff. So next year, 2021, I believe we'll go back to in-person events, because I think this COVID thing will have sort of passed. Hopefully, we'll get people to go back to garages or backyards or block parties or bars and restaurants, or wherever people won't feel like getting together, Father's Eve. And then I think we'll do online as well, because we realize that that pretty interesting strategy, you can reach a lot of people who aren't able or or really don't want to go out and meet other guys in person, but they do want to connect and share ideas online. So Father's Eve is a real deal. It's really starting to catch on. We've got sponsors. We've got a charity partner now. Our charity partner is called Children's Miracle Network.
Oh yeah.
It's a hospital network. They have
Yep.
170 hospitals for kids.
It's an awesome one.
Yeah,
That's
they're big and
incredible.
they're wonderful, and we think we can really do some good to help raise money for their hospitals in local communities. And they've got some resources they can help us promote. You know, Father's Eve becomes their channel to kind of reach the dads, right? It's a different segment than they're usually going for their fundraising. So Father's Eve is not a charity. It's not. You know, I say I don't want the scrutiny or the complexity of being a nonprofit. We are an event company, I guess, and we raise money as a fundraiser for charity. So we raise money to give it away. That's really what we're all about. And the idea is you come to Father's Eve to connect and share and celebrate fatherhood.
It's awesome.
So we have some fun. We don't really have any program. I say we're not selling anything. We're not preaching to anybody. We're not solving anyone's problems. You know, we're not there to do anything but just be together and kind of hang out. What we did start doing a little bit last year and a little bit this year actually was asking guys to tell their stories.
Yeah.
You know, what do you know about being a dad? Or what do you love about being a dad? Or tell your story about your dad, or tell some stories, because guys will learn from talking to each other. They won't ask for help. We all know that. But if they learn and hear stories about, you know, like I could tell you how I taught my kid how to ride a bike, for
Right.
example.
Yeah.
And or now, like, how did you help move your kid to go to college or whatever? You know, how did you teach your kid to drive a car? You know, all kinds of things that dads are dealing with. And we can tell stories and share ideas about what worked or what didn't work. And the other guys will listen. You know, they're not asking for the help, but they're getting that help from each other.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I think, you know, a couple other key points, I guess, just I want to share is going through my head here is one is I think a lot of guys get disconnected as they get older, right? They're too busy with work. Poor guys, you know, the guy's got a real job and he works and travels, kind of like my dad used to, right?
Balancing work and family and
That's
everything.
hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. So guys don't stay connected like they probably want to, or they probably should. So I say Father's Eve is a point where you can bring your buddies or come make some new ones, you know,
Awesome.
because we're there to connect, and there's no expectation. You know, if you want to talk, talk. If you don't want to talk, don't. Nobody cares. I mean, we have some games, some activities, some things to do, but you know, there's really no pressure. And then the other piece I think that I'm finding really valuable about Father's Eve is guys will learn, you know, what we take for granted being a dad, and just, you know, guys just all of a sudden you're having babies and you're a dad and you're doing your thing and you just do it, right? You learn
Right.
from each other. And
Right.
but I think dads can learn to be even just a little more intentional about being a better dad.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
it's not changing the whole game, but you know what? I've seen guys at Father's Eve that we host, that I've been the host at my events, and I hear about it from other guys. You know, I talk to my guys after, like, hey, how'd it go? What happened at your deal? And I say, you know, what was the outcome? And they say these guys come away with a whole new understanding and appreciation of how important their role as dad really is.
Well, that's big.
And they recognize it, and they say, wow, I can do better. I can do more. I want to do better. I want to do more, right? They're not struggling or failing, you know, they're just doing their thing, but they recognize just a little more effort, they could really do a bigger, better impact. And not just for their own family, but for their community.
Yeah. It grows from the family out
Oh,
too.
I think that it's a tremendous opportunity. So I see that as kind of our mission, and our kind of our why is to connect and celebrate fatherhood.
Yep.
So we say, you know, I tell the story, man, I love Father's Day. Father's Day, you know, I'm with my wife and my kids, and we visit the grave where my dad is and my brother. You know, it's about dads and family. Father's Day is for dads and family. That's usually what people are doing. Father's Eve is the night before, is just for the dads.
Yeah.
So I say we love Father's Day so much we wanted more. Most guys got to work on Monday, so we had to back into it Saturday night. So that's how we got to Father's Eve.
That's awesome. You said something. You said that you don't solve any problems, which, that's not part of your model, but a side effect is that you do, because a big problem is men kind of needing to step up. And I think whenever you surround them by other men with a purpose,
Yeah.
that happens naturally. And so I
Yeah.
think it is solving a massive problem.
Yeah, you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
it certainly has. And I'll tell you what, for example, in I think it was 2016 when we first did the 12 cities. And I was like, I asked basically friends of mine, like, hey, I need you to throw a party on Saturday in June, and I need you to call it Father's Eve. And they're like, well, what's that? And so I explained everything, and they did it. And maybe it was the next year after. Anyway, early on, I talked to a guy, somebody in North Carolina. And I didn't really know the guy. Like we weren't already really close friends. And I said, how'd it go? I called these guys up on like the Tuesday. I'd say, what happened on Saturday? And this guy said, I'll tell you what. He said we had 5 guys. That was it. We sat at a table and talked for 3 hours. And I said, no way. I said, there's no way that doesn't happen. He said, no, it doesn't happen anywhere else.
No.
He
Yeah.
said this was the opportunity for these guys to get together and just start sharing their issues and talking about their family and their wife and their kids and their job and whatever. They were able to talk about anything because, like I say, it's a judgment-free environment, right? We're not there. We're just there to listen and talk and share ideas. And so he said they left knowing that they were going to stay connected. If nothing else, I'll see you next year for Father's Eve. So guys keep coming back and to these events when we're allowed to have them in person. And I'm seeing the same thing. It's like a snowball effect, right? They come and they see their buddies from, hey, I remember you from last year, and they might bring a few new guys with them, and it just keeps going and going, and we're seeing that all over the country.
That's
And
incredible.
it's really a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's really a lot of fun, and we don't charge anything, right? We're not taking any credit card numbers. We're not spamming people. We're not pushing anything. We're there to have a good time. It's really about just connect and share and celebrate. Have some fun. We have some games. We keep it clean. There's a few rules you got to follow. It's all on the website, which is pretty straightforward. But we think the way to monetize this is with sponsors. Once it gets a critical mass and there are sponsors that want to be the official, fill in the blank of Father's Eve, we'll let those sponsors pay for that privilege.
Yeah.
And we'll use that money to produce more events and have more fun at our events. And that's kind of the strategy is, I want it to be free and fun, like every other holiday should be free and
Right.
fun.
Yeah.
And Father's Eve is just a new holiday for dads. And we're not taking anything away from mom, and we're not taking anything away from Father's Day. We just kind of tucked it in and added a new opportunity for guys to connect in a way that I think they really want to.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like an awesome opportunity. It also sounds like an awesome opportunity for maybe some of the listeners to kind of spearhead something in their area, which, there's a lot of men who ask, what do I do? And this is the perfect segue. It's like, host something like this because you're bringing a tribe to yourself around something that's already, started. And so tell me, how does somebody, there's a man listening to this and he's like, man, my community could really use this. What's that look like for them?
Well, the easiest thing to do is invite your buddies over to your house, like I did in my garage. Right? It was friends and family in my garage, and we had nothing to do but empty some beer cans.
Hang out.
Right? There was nothing to it. So make it whatever you want. I mean, there are again some simple, easy rules, but it's not at all complicated. Most guys start at home in their backyard or their garage or their basement or whatever. Then it kind of grows. Usually it turns into a block party, maybe a neighborhood party. We've seen some of that, like at the end of the cul-de-sac, they block off the roads and then start a bonfire, go nuts. But then it usually moves to a bar or a restaurant. Yeah, so somebody else can do the cleanup, and you can
Right.
have servers and people with food and drinks and whatever. We've had guys do. We had one guy. I can't remember. I think he was in Kansas City. He did a fundraiser for his son's basketball team. He's like, "Can I raise money?" I said, "Yeah, we want you to raise money." He said, pick a local charity,
That's
or you
awesome.
can use our charity. That now the Children's Miracle Network. We think there's some great strategy that could come from that, using them as our fundraiser
Oh
partner.
yeah.
But most guys just get together. They have it pretty low key. We're not selling anything. I used to send out boxes. I'd get coupons and
Right.
giveaways and T-shirts and koozies and stickers and all that. And we have some fun giving stuff away. But the idea is just keep it real simple. I mean, there's really two things: is pick a place, pick a location, and make it happen. I mean, what night it's going to be. The
Yeah.
timing of the deal. Usually we start at like 6 o'clock at night. We get
Mhm.
together and we got the grill going and we're cooking up and we're just hanging out. Then our peak is 8 o'clock. We do a countdown toast, just like New Year's Eve at midnight. You go 10, 9, 8, 7, all the way. We do that at 8 o'clock. So you
That's
stop
how it's
everything.
done.
You do a countdown, a toast to the dads, happy Father's Eve. And then we're done by like 9 o'clock. It pretty much wraps up. 10 o'clock, everybody's gone and it's over.
So
You
the
know,
next day you're fresh and ready for your family.
yeah, it's.
Yeah.
I want to be ready for my kids, right?
Yeah.
My family, and the next day. So we have a lot of fun doing it. It's easy. It's free. It's simple. There's a website, fatherseve.com.
All right.
There's a button that says host an event, is what we call it. We don't promote it as a party. It might turn into a party. It might look like a party. It kind of depends on the who's doing it, but we don't promote it as a party.
Right.
We promote it as an event because we want to have more than just guys going nuts. We want to have some fun and do some good. And then the fundraising charity thing is really what gives it a bigger purpose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last year, out of the 60 cities that we did in person events, I think we had 12 that did fundraisers
Hmm.
for local charities. And we've got some opportunity there to really do some good
Yeah,
because these guys want to do some good. If you can, you do, and but you don't have to. That's not a requirement.
that's awesome. So fatherseve.com is the place to go if you're interested.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there, and we're on all the social medias and all that. And,
Yes. Yeah.
um, I'm not a hard guy to find. You put in John Francis, Father's Eve. you know,
Got
you
you on
might see
LinkedIn.
my work life is franchising. I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of my day job, but Father's Eve is my side gig, and it's a very seasonal business. Scott, I say it's a one night a year business, right? That's now we work on it pretty hard from April, May, and June, ramping up, and like now this time of year in the summer and fall we're looking for sponsors and we're trying to build those relationships, and I'm doing some networking, all around the country and even around the world. We've got some other guys in other countries that want to do this, which
That's
I think is
awesome.
fantastic. Why
Yeah.
not? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, I think I would like to, honestly, I'd like to challenge our listeners. It would be really great for 2021 for at least five official Father's Eve groups going on just from our listeners. That's my challenge. So that's what
yeah.
I'm looking at. Let's start.
And you
That.
could be the Brotherhood of Fatherhood for Father's Eve.
Yeah. Right.
You could tag on the branding, and if you're a nonprofit, or if guys want to pick a nonprofit, a charity, or like I say, you can use the charity we're affiliated with. That's your option. Or forget about the charity. You can do that later.
I don't know.
Once
I
you
really like that
get
there's a
over.
mission in place, like a common thing. We're coming together because we're fathers and getting, but I think doing it for having some sort of charitable fundraising thing is I don't know. I would highly support that.
Yeah,
It's important.
I agree. It gives us a focus and a purpose, and frankly, it's good to give. People
It
feel
is.
good about it, and we find some creative ways to raise that money.
Yeah.
We've done golf tournaments, poker tournaments. We had an axe throwing tournament at one place. Use your imagination, raffles and drawings and silent auctions, and
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's a bunch of guys, so it's supposed to be fun. That's the whole idea. Keep it
Incredible.
simple, make it fun.
Yep.
Don't overthink it. Just do it. Pick a place, make it happen.
Yeah. That's excellent. Well, John, I'm really excited that that we made a connection through LinkedIn. It's been really cool. I want to thank you first of all for sharing the story about your family and your dad and your brother and how this all came together. It just kind of makes sense. It's just really, really exciting. So thank you so much for joining us on this.
Yeah,
Appreciate
you're welcome, Scott. I appreciate the opportunity to tell my story, and I feel blessed. I'm a lucky guy. I mean, like I said when we started, I'm just doing my part here, trying to figure it out. And I think if what I've created can really help some other people and do some good, and can really create something that makes a difference out there, amen to that.
Absolutely.
That's the whole thing.
Agreed. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast. And if you liked this, make sure that you check out the show notes, because we'll have links to all of John's, what he talked about, the fatherseve.com, so that you can get involved. We highly encourage you to do that. And then if you enjoyed the podcast, make sure you subscribe and hit us up on Facebook. Get to our group, Brotherhood of Fatherhood. We also have a page so your wife kind of knows what's going on if you need that too. And thanks for being listeners. Have a wonderful day.